Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. One of the things that I'm always asked first thing when I tell someone that I work with sharks is, have I been bitten by a shark? The answer to that is no. Granted, I am an early career scientist. I did just graduate from Rutgers. All the danger that I have experienced with sharks has been explicitly with the gear that I handle. A lot of the gear requires a ton of ropes, so you have to constantly be aware of your surroundings. And when you're handling a shark, you have to respect them and respect the people that are handling the shark with you. And as long as you guys are all aware and doing your job, then there's essentially no danger from the shark to you. So this is me. This is me holding a piece of bait for a drum line, which I will go more into later. I am a fellow at Field School in Miami right now. They conduct shark research and run courses. I help them with their research, and I also help them to teach incoming shark scientists. I'm also a co-founder of Minorities in Shark Sciences, which just launched a little over a month ago, which is aimed at including more women of color in shark science. So for my first slide, I am going to show 4 species of sharks. And here is the first one. Please feel free to type in the chat. I'll read them out as they come in. Yep, that is a great white. All right, next one. What species of shark is this? Yep, it is a nurse shark. That is the first shark that I ever tagged or came in contact with and had my hands on. And next one. This is a tiger shark. And yes, it is absolutely a cool one. Tiger sharks actually lose the stripes that you can see on the side when they're older. They fade out and they look a lot more gray. So this is a younger tiger shark. And then the last one. This is a hammerhead. This is actually a pregnant hammerhead. You can see how large her stomach is. She was caught off the coast of Miami. And this was actually the first hammerhead that I ever touched. And it was an amazing experience. So moving on, how was I introduced to the ocean? One of my first introductions was the Monterey Bay Aquarium. I grew up in San Francisco, so going to the aquarium has been something that I have done multiple times in my life. This is a picture of me probably between the ages of 3 or 4 at the aquarium with my aunt. And behind me is the huge kelp forest exhibit that the Monterey Bay Aquarium has that houses a bunch of different sharks and fish. So aquariums played a huge role in my overall exposure to sharks. This next picture of me is me at the Galapagos Islands. In 2002, when I was 3, I went with my mom's. And this is actually where my first memory of the ocean is. I have a very clear memory of being in a small fishing boat looking at these amazing sandy islands and looking down in the water in this crystal clear blue water and seeing all these different amazing colors of fish. And that was my first exposure to extremely colorful fish. And I was just in awe of their colors and how amazing they looked just on top. I didn't even go underwater, I didn't even swim with them. Just seeing them below the surface and the crazy colors flashing was amazing to me. So my first encounter with a shark was when I went to Fiji the summer before my senior year of high school. I did a conservation trip. One of the days we went on a boat, jumped in the ocean, and spent probably around 2 hours just swimming around this coral reef that happened to have a bunch of white tip sharks, white tip reef sharks swimming in it. And this photo is the first time that I swam remotely close to a shark. And admittedly, I was a little afraid. I think we all have an inherent fear of sharks, especially from the way the media portrays them. But really, in this experience, this was the first time that I realized sharks want nothing to do with us. They have no interest in eating us. They have no interest in even being near us. They just want to go about their day. And we're just out here bothering them all the time doing research. And this picture to the right is just some of the amazing views that I saw while I was in Fiji. So some background on me after I graduated. I went to Rutgers and got a bachelor's of science in marine biology. You know, I chose Rutgers because their marine science department is very well known and they do a ton of research, which is the area of science that I wanted to go into. One of the things that I have struggled with a lot is test taking, and college is all about your ability to reproduce information on exams. So I decided that to compensate for my lower GPA, I was going to show how hard I worked. So I made it a point of working in tons of labs during my undergraduate experience so that I could have people who would back me and say when I applied to jobs that this person will work really hard for you. She will learn from you. She will do absolutely anything that you ask of her, and she will do it to the best of her ability. So some of the labs I worked for In the upper left-hand corner, there are those little shells. Those are called foraminifera. They're a single-celled organism, and they're extremely small. This is brought up to make it so that you guys can all see them. I looked at them under microscopes. They produce a shell, which is what you see here called a test, which is made out of calcium carbonate. So they fossilize. They sink to the bottom of the ocean. They sit in the ocean sediment, and you can actually send these huge, essentially empty pipes known as sediment cores. You can shoot them down into the ocean, pull it up, and you'll have essentially a time scale going up this pipe of sediment. And you can take these forams out and analyze them to know things like what the weather was, how much calcium was in the atmosphere at the time that they died, and at the time that they were alive. Another thing that I did, these two middle pictures, I worked in a lab at the New Jersey Institute of Technology, which was my most recent project, where in the beginning of 2020, I flew to Thailand with my lab on an NSF-funded project to look at Cryptotora, which is this bottom fish in the middle photo. And it's basically a blind walking cave fish that actually has pelvic bones similar to how we have hips, and they can walk, which is crazy. And they live in these caves in Thailand, and they walk up waterfalls. And so that was one of my first really large field experiences. You know, we spent 2 weeks essentially out driving all around Thailand looking for different species of fish. And it was, amazing. Traveling is a really big part of research, especially if you do field research. And that's the part that I love the most. So now that I've given you a background, I am going to give you a little summary of shark fishing and a summary of workups and some of the research that I've done and some of the sharks that I've met. So, shark fishing. These are all pictures of things that I have done while fishing for sharks. One of the things that is incredibly important with shark fishing is patience. You can't tell a shark to get on your hook. You have to put your lines in there and sit and wait and hope that you get some sharks. So you could do a full day of shark fishing and then not catch any sharks and have to go out the next day and hope that you catch them. So the two ways that I have, the two fishing methods that I have used for catching sharks are drum lining and long lining. And a lot of the danger, as I mentioned at the beginning with shark fishing, comes from the equipment. Both of these methods require handling really long lines and also heavy equipment in the back of the boat, a small area where you're all crowded around each other. And so you have to be extremely alert of your surroundings, of what everyone else is doing, to make sure that you are all safe in putting out your equipment. So long lines sound exactly like what they are. They are extremely long lines. And I have a picture of this. It's the second photo from the left on the bottom row, where there are those three women each holding that black line. That is the long line. That is what goes out. You attach hooks to it. It floats at the top of the ocean. You can catch, I believe those long lines have 11 hooks on them. They're about 650 feet long. So when you put them out, you have to be really careful to make sure that it doesn't get tangled. That black line in particular can get tangled very quickly, which is why the two girls in blue are strictly there to make sure there are absolutely no knots for the woman in gray who is then putting the line out. I have actually experienced getting knots in these before, and it takes a bunch of communication from those two girls first to say there is a knot, so that you can then tell the boat captain that there's a knot and he can slow down the boat as you're putting it out. The next way, drum lining. You can see all of the ropes drum lining directly to the right of the photo I was just talking about with all those orange lines. A drum line is essentially a hook at the end of a very long fishing line made out of monofilament that attaches to a drum, which is essentially just a weight that sits at the bottom of the ocean. And then all those orange lines are there because then you have buoys that sit at the very top of the ocean. So if you're fishing, in 100 feet of water, you need to have 100 feet of line for the drum at the bottom, and then you have to haul that whole thing up before you can even get to the line that the shark might be on. Drum lines are typically used to catch larger sharks because you can put larger pieces of bait on them. There's also a larger swimming radius for the sharks to make sure that they're still getting air over their gills. Long lines, because they're closer together, they have smaller bait, and so you're more likely to catch the smaller sharks. This picture on the bottom right is me holding the gangin that has the hook on it from a long line. So you collect the long line from the front of the boat, and then you walk the shark back if there's one on the line. So I essentially had a pet shark for like 10 seconds while I was walking down to the back so we could do a workup. Um, so when you catch a shark, how do you get it on the boat? What do you do with it? One of the first things you do is if they're large enough, you get them onto this platform that you can see. We have this shark on this beautiful black tip. The platform is about 11 feet long. It's 4 feet wide or tall. Um, and depending on the size of the shark, that changes how many people are on the are actually handling the shark before the workup starts. So if it's a small shark, it could be one person, but if it's a really large shark, it could be 5 people. In the picture that you can see here, this is my friend Nick and I at field school. This shark was small enough that he is holding the head and I am holding the midsection of the shark and the tail. Um, you can see in this picture at the very big front of the shark's head, there is a pipe, and that pipe is actually a PVC pipe with holes screwed into it. And that is for the purpose of pushing water over the shark's gills continuously throughout the workup. Some sharks do not need this. Some sharks are buccal pumpers, which means that they can force water over their gills without needing to swim. An example of this would be a nurse shark. So when we get them on the platform, we don't actually put a pipe in. You can see that the platform is slightly submerged underwater, and that is enough for them to continuously push water over their gills. So the next thing is there are 5 measurements that are taken during a shark workup. These 2 middle pictures are tagging, and then the top right on the top picture on the right is a fin clip. The middle picture is measuring, and the bottom is blood. Um, so I just went through them, but I'll go them again. During the workup, you take a muscle sample, you take a fin sample, which is taken from the dorsal fin. You take a blood sample. You do 3 measurements of length, which is head to where the tail starts, a total length from head to the end of the tail, and then a girth length, which is from pectoral fin to pectoral fin, so across the shark. And then additionally, you put a tag into the dorsal fin. All sharks have a soft spot underneath their dorsal fin, and that's where you put the tag in. So these 2 middle pictures, you can see my friend Kit putting one tag in using that little instrument right there. And then that bottom picture is what the tag looks like. There are tons of different kinds of tags. This is just one example of what we've used. And then the last data collection that I'll talk about is taking blood. So sharks, when they get stressed out, they secrete lactic acid into their blood. And sharks do not have large hearts like humans do. Humans have a heart that's big enough to pump all the blood around their body. Sharks have smaller hearts, and their tail is actually what assists them with pumping blood. So when they get stressed out, they don't have something that can remove the lactic acid from their blood, and it can actually kill them. So you take a blood at the beginning when you first start the workup, and then you take some blood at the end to see, so you can see the changes, the physiological changes that happen to the shark while you're doing the workup. And the whole workup is done very systematically for the safety of the animals and for the safety of those handling it. The person who is holding the head is the one who is in charge of the workup. They're the ones who tell you when you can start. They're the ones who tell you when to pause because they're closest to the head of the shark. And they can sense almost first, most of the time, when the shark might tense up for a minute. These are some more pictures that I have. So this picture on the left is another picture of drawing blood. Shark blood clots really fast. So when a human is in the water and they start bleeding, we'll continuously bleed because we do not have the physiological capabilities to clot while we're underwater, whereas we clot really fast and stop bleeding if we fall on pavement and cut ourselves. So sharks are the opposite, and when they're in the water, their blood will clot super quickly. So when you take this blood, you take the needle out and you essentially have to keep shaking it so the blood keeps moving and doesn't clot. And then you put it into this little vial that adds some chemicals to it and makes it so that the shark blood will not clot. So on release, the person that's holding the head is the last person to touch the shark. And a really good example of this is this middle picture. So my friend Jake is the one holding this nurse shark. He was holding the head originally. The woman right behind him, Catherine, was holding his midsection. And then the woman right behind her, closest to us, was holding his tail. And so the way that they would release this nurse shark is they would pass it up. And this is essentially to make it so that we don't get injured by getting slapped in the face by the tail of a shark and making sure that the shark feels like they can get away from us, which is really all they want during the workup. They just want to not be near us anymore. And these pictures on the right are some more pictures of release. This was a beautiful hammerhead that, again, you can see the guy right in front of us, Christian, he was the one who had the head, and you pass it up through him. So now that we've gone through a very quick summary of what a workup looks like, here are some of the sharks that I have met. I have met hammerheads, nurse sharks, sandbars, black tips, black noses, bonnet heads, so many species of sharks. And they all have different personalities. They all act different throughout a workup. One of the biggest distinctions I've made that pretty much goes across all the species I've tagged is that little sharks have the most to lose. When you pull them up, they will lose their mind. They're like, these people are going to kill me. They're going to eat me. I need to live. I need to get away from them. Whereas large sharks, when you get them on the platform, once they're on there, they kind of just sit and you do the whole workup and they'll just not move. And then at the end, you'll release them, they'll swim away and they'll just go about their day, probably going to talk to other sharks and saying, I can't believe I was just touched by people. That was the worst. But hey, I've got this cool new jewelry tag. Look at this underneath my dorsal fin. Um, some more sharks. This picture in the upper left is a nurse shark. Nurse shark personalities are probably my favorite. I like to say that if you were to put music to a nurse shark workup, it would definitely be heavy metal screaming all of the lyrics. They are very flexible and they also sit on the bottom of the ocean. So they have a specialized group of muscles that allow them to push off that sharks who don't sit on the bottom of the ocean don't have. So, like a hammerhead does not have the ability to push off of the surface the way a nurse shark does. So when you have a nurse shark on the line in the water, like in the upper left corner, they do these rolls that we like to call death rolls. Well, they're essentially just throwing their body around underwater, doing these crazy rolls. And they're also incredibly powerful. So it takes a lot of patience to get them on. And the picture right below that in the bottom left is a smaller baby nurse shark. And they the way that you get baby nurse sharks on board, you actually do the workup on the back of the boat, not on the platform. You lift them out of the water, and the first place you go is to the floor of the boat so that you can make sure you have a good handle on them while they kind of writhe around a little, being really confused as to why your hands are suddenly on them. The next personality that is my favorite is great hammerheads. They will do all of these crazy, like 90-degree turns while you're in the water, followed by short bursts of speed. They're incredibly agile and graceful in the water. And that really shows, especially during the workup. So once you're done, fighting with them to get them on this platform, they'll really just sit there and be calm. And then when you're ready to let them go, they will happily swim away. They are my favorite species of shark. They have so many cool aspects of them. Their family as a whole, that includes bonnet heads and scalloped head hammerheads, are my favorite. They're just amazing. This shark on the right is a tiger shark. That is one of the first tiger sharks that I tagged. And one of the things with tiger sharks that other sharks do is they actually secrete a mucus over their body that has a ton of bacteria in it. And they will writhe around when you're on the platform. I got shark burn from them, which is essentially like if you fall on a rug and you get rug burn, it feels like that. But then you have to go clean it really well because of all the bacteria, and you don't want that cut to get infected. And then this bottom picture is the largest hammerhead that I have been in contact with. Our platform, again, is 11 feet long. So this hammerhead from head to tail is probably around 10 feet. And there's 4 people on this hammerhead. And it took more than 4 people to get this hammerhead to the side of the boat to then be able to do the workup. And then throughout the workup, those 4 are consistently holding the shark to make sure that she's calm and make sure that we're going about the workup as quickly as we can. So before I conclude, I like to play this little game with my Twitter followers where I ask them almost daily how a marine species would wear pants. So this is the first one. This is a sawfish. All right, so next one, this is a hammerhead. And this hammerhead is also wearing hats. And last one, this is just a generic, could be a black tip shark. Top or bottom works. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then just conclude really quickly. So, to conclude, I'm hoping to go back to school. I want to get a master's and then eventually a PhD because I love teaching and I love sharing the species of animal with people, and the amount of respect that I have for them is huge. And I want everyone to see exactly how amazing they are. I do hope to continue doing field work. I love field work. It is definitely where I excel in showing my abilities. And I'm also looking forward to continuing my work with minorities in shark sciences. It's really important to tell girls that they can do anything that they want, especially shark science. You are welcome here. We love having you here. You are equally as capable in handling sharks as men are, and we need more women in this field. So sharks are not cute and cuddly, like dogs, but they are incredibly important to conserve, and they're not here to hurt us. They want to be away from us, and we're here just to learn about them, learn about how important they are to the ocean, um, and generally just we have to be very careful with how we handle them, and we have to respect them when we're handling them. So if there's three things that I want you to get out of my talk, I want you to know that sharks are awesome. As long as you work your hardest, you can do absolutely anything you want, no matter what your grades are. You just have to show that you are a hard worker and that you have the capability to listen to someone and learn from them. And the last one is that you can do anything, no matter what anyone says, you can absolutely do whatever career you want to do as long as you put your mind to it. So, the most rewarding part for me, I think, is changing people's minds about sharks. A lot of people just come in inherently afraid of them, which is understandable. They are incredibly powerful. But at the end of talking with someone, I love when their first response is, wow, sharks are definitely not out here to kill us. And they're incredibly important. And to me, that's just so rewarding to change someone's mind, and help a shark's reputation, especially since right now they have such a bad one. I think my most memorable one, the first one that comes to mind, is the hammerhead picture that I showed of the 10-foot, relatively 10-foot hammerhead. We spent, I want to say, like close to 10 minutes trying to get that shark onto the platform. And then once we got her onto the platform, we were trying to get this tail rope on her, and she was really just not having it. She was like, I do not want to be here. Please just let me go. And, we eventually did the whole workup. We let her go, and then there's this footage of my friend Jake in the water taking video of the release, and she swims right at him, and he just gently puts his hand on her and pushes her to the side, and then you can watch her just gracefully swim off. And it's just amazing to watch. And having like experienced all that and then watching this shark just gracefully swim away is absolutely an amazing memory that I have. So I co-founded Minorities in Shark Sciences because when I was younger and I'd watch Shark Week and I'd look at all these shark researchers, I never saw anyone who looked like me. Um, and 2 months ago, I discovered that there were at least three other Black shark scientists, all in the U.S., who also experienced the same thing as me. So one of the things I definitely experienced in college was being one of the only women of color in the room. I did grow up going to a school that did not have a lot of Black people, so that was not a new experience for me. Um, One of the things that people have a tendency to do is they'll talk over you, which is incredibly annoying. And you kind of have to learn to be like, I just said that. You should listen to what I just said, even though as a white male, for example, are repeating what I just said to you. In terms of jobs, I decided to be a fellow at field school. And one of the reasons I did that was because I have full confidence that if someone were to discriminate against me or say something discriminatory to me, that they would stand up for me and that they would have my back. And, making those connections with people to the point that you can have that conversation with them and ask them how good of a mentor they would be for a person of color, because it is different being a mentor for a person of color versus being a mentor for someone who's white. Um, it's definitely something to consider when you decide, what mentor you're going to have, who you're going to work for, what friends you're going to have. I, when you go into this field specifically for me, one of the things that I decided was that I was okay being the person standing out in a room, and that I was okay taking on that emotional weight. Um, and it is hard sometimes, it's hard to be the only person of color in a room, but you have to maintain this confidence with yourself, and you have to create a network of people who support you no matter what. And then you can succeed and you can realize that you do belong here. Because I'm an early career scientist, I personally have not really felt the effects of global warming, on the research that I have assisted with. I know that global warming has changed, how sharks move around in the ocean. That also goes for just fish. They decide where they're going to be based on how warm the water is, how cold the water is. So I know that global warming and things like that, especially with ocean temperature warming, has affected other people's research a lot. But I personally have not yet been affected, although I'm sure I will be. So that question always comes with the question of, do I believe if the megalodon is extinct? The answer is yes. That shark was huge, and we would know if it existed. One of the things that my friend Jasmine actually said the other day was whales are really large because the megalodon does not exist anymore. Whales used to be really small so that they could get away from such a large shark, and now they're large and they're slow, and that's just one indicator that that giant shark does not exist. Um, I do think that the majority, if not all, of the sharks that we say are extinct likely are, because there's tons of research that goes into it before we decide that a shark species is extinct. That being said, roughly every 3 weeks we discover a new species of shark. So there are tons of sharks that we do not know about. But going back to the megalodon, we would know if that shark was alive. We would 100% be aware of that. My biggest recommendation for high schoolers is to, when you apply to a marine science program, make sure that they have what you think will be interesting to you. One of the mistakes that I made going to Rutgers is they don't have a researcher who does large marine species. It's very focused on physical oceanography, microbiome, things like that. So I had to go above and beyond to get out and find someone who did larger species like sharks. Um, when you get to college, you should 100% put yourself out there from your freshman year, which is really intimidating. I know because I experienced it. But getting as much lab research as you can, one, looks really great on your resume, but it also gives you um, experience in all of the crazy amount of different fields that our marine science can be. I chose shark science, but one of my best friends does Arctic phytoplankton. Like there's an insane amount of careers that you can take up under marine biology. So being really proactive in getting yourself experience, especially at the school where you don't have to travel anywhere, you're already there, is incredibly important. And then after that, once you've started to meet people, networking is incredibly important as well. Marine scientists absolutely talk to each other, and they know someone who knows someone who knows someone. And it's really important that you tell, whatever mentor you end up with, like, this is the area that I want to go in. Do you know someone that you can connect me with if their research is not what you want to do? Um, so networking, getting experience. And then the last one is just looking for experience outside of your institution, because there are tons of opportunities. And just making yourself aware of what they are is really important. I went to field school because I received a scholarship from them, and they're located in Miami. And that's something that I found online and decided to apply for. And that's basically how I got into shark science. So, doing those things, especially as a college student, I would say are incredibly important. I am like most people who've never experienced a shark. I was afraid of them. I don't think I quite fell into the group of people who think that they're man eating and just want to kill us humans. Um, but I definitely had an inherent fear of them. And the fear was not backed by anything. The fear was just from me watching, specific shows on Shark Week that make it seem like the shark is, there to eat them. And reading about shark attacks and things like that, your vision of them can be very skewed by what you see on the media, which applies to any opinion. Um, Once I started studying them, I really realized that, when I'm up close and personal with a shark, they want nothing to do with me. They really don't want to be, they don't want me to be touching them. They don't want to be near me. They just want to go about their sharky day, eating fish, doing whatever they want. Um, and so my perception shifted from sharks are in the ocean and they're going to bite me if I go in the ocean, to sharks are in the ocean and they really don't want anything to do with me. And I'm going into their home and they're letting me be here essentially. Um, and I need to do better about how I talk about them and make sure that people understand what I've understood from them, which is that they just don't want to be around us at all. Okay, I have two answers to this. The first one is the diversity at which sharks reproduce. Their reproduction changes by species, and it's probably one of the most diverse groups of animals that have different ways of reproducing. So that's my first answer. And the second one is species specific. Bonnet heads actually eat seagrass on top of the crabs that they eat. And they're the first species of shark that we know of that actually eats meat and also eats a vegetable with their dinner. And they actually get benefits out of that. They can actually digest the seagrass and get benefits from eating it and from the nutrients that are in it. And I think that is just an insane finding, especially because we like to think of sharks as carnivores. And here we have this shark that voluntarily eats grass. My favorite species of shark is the gray hammerhead. They are just amazing and majestic and super graceful underwater for how large they are, and their heads just look funny. So all of those things combined, I absolutely love gray hammerheads. I have two moms. One of them has worked in restaurants her whole life. The other one does research for IBM. And I honestly couldn't really tell you what her job is, but I know she's works for IBM and she does business. Both of them have been extremely open-minded from the start. When I said I wanted to do marine science, they've been incredibly supportive. When I've told other family members, again, the first question that I have gotten is, "You want to go in the ocean? Why would you want to go in the ocean? And why would you want to be with sharks? They're going to eat you." And that is definitely a very hard thing to consistently encounter, especially with family members. Um, and I just like my field so much that I ignore it, and I'm like, this is what I like doing. You don't have to do it, and it's fine if you don't want to, but this is what I want to do. And just showing that you can be successful in this field, and in reality you should be doing what you want to be doing no matter what anyone else says. So if you love sharks and you want to go into shark research, then you should put yourself in situations so that you can actually do that despite what other people are saying to you. I have never been attacked by a shark ever. I've never even been in a position where I would say I could have been attacked by a shark. The first time that I was close to a shark was a nurse shark. I was tagging it. Um, and there was no reaction from the shark whatsoever to me being close to it. Um, and I also had an immense amount of trust in the people that were holding the shark while I was doing the tagging. Communication is incredibly important when you are holding anything that has the potential to harm you and or is stronger than you, I should say. Um, but in no circumstances, whether that be me holding the head of the shark or me holding the tail or releasing or swimming in the ocean and seeing a shark, none of those instances have I ever felt even remotely threatened by a shark. So I have handled great hammerheads, bonnet heads, black tips, black noses, tiger sharks, nurse sharks. I think one bull shark. Uh, that's seven. Those are the seven that I have physically handled. Um, I have seen way more, especially when I was in Fiji. I saw white tip reef sharks. When you go to the aquarium, you can see leopard sharks, swell sharks. But I have actually physically had my hands on between 7 and 8 species of sharks. I think what inspired me to study them was how misunderstood they are. Um, the idea of teaching others that they're not what they think they are is very important to me. Um, Helping a species that can't speak for themselves is very important to me. Um, and studying them, like researching and studying them, I think was also influenced just by my overall love of the ocean. And the reading that I did in high school, just being curious about sharks. Um, there's so much to learn about them. There are so many species of them. We're still discovering species of them. Um, and I just think it's so interesting how diverse that family by itself is without even going into species by species. Like they're all different and they all look different. They all have different ways of living. They all eat different things. And, my overall love of the ocean and love of researching new things is definitely what drew me into that. So I really want to go back to school. I want to go to grad school. Whether that includes a master's is up for debate, but I absolutely want to get a PhD. Um, I really want to teach, and especially to teach in higher education, you need to have a PhD to do that. Um, I would really like to keep doing field work. I love it. The way I think just works out perfectly with the way that you do field work. Um, and yeah, I think those are my two career goals right now. I also would really like to publish my own research. That is absolutely on my radar. Yeah, so one of the biggest stereotypes is that women are not strong enough to handle sharks and that it's a men's field. Um, yes, women are built differently than men. Our muscle does not show in the same way. And there is a different technique, more of a finesse, I would say, with being a woman and handling sharks. But we're equally as able to do that. And a lot of times people will assume that because I'm 5'4" and I'm skinny, that I absolutely cannot handle a large shark, which is absolutely not true. Um, Another one, just overall sexism of speaking over women when they're talking about something that they know, ignoring what they've said and repeating it as if it's your own is something that happens. Um, and another reason having allies and having friends who will stand up for you is having that person in the room will be like, hey, Amani just said that. Maybe we should go back and we should listen to what she was having to say. Um, so there are still stereotypes, especially being a woman and then especially being a person of color. But you get around them and you make a space for yourself where you feel comfortable. And there are plenty of people in this field who want to change that, and who want to make it more diverse and who want to make it so women feel more welcome and so people of color feel more welcome. And this field is definitely turning for the better, um, and becoming more open to other women. So in high school, I didn't really do that much in all honesty. I hit my senior year and I was like, I'm gonna cruise. I'm in college. I got in, I'm gonna cruise. The first marine science experience I had was with Rustic Pathways, which is a program that lets you basically go and volunteer in another country. That's where I did the conservation project. When I got to college, we had an oceanography club. That was the first thing that I joined. We did a bunch of different things as an oceanography club. We would do beach sweeps, we would have speakers, we would do documentary nights, things like that. I volunteered at an aquarium for one summer. I volunteered in their animal handling department. So I handled sharks, but I also handled their fish. I helped them with cleaning tanks and feeding them, and basically just managing whatever species they wanted me to manage. I then did labs. I did a bunch of different labs. I did a paleoceanography lab, which has nothing to do with shark science, but it prepared me for understanding what lab work looks like, the amount of organization lab work takes, um, the work that gets put into even getting the data to then do the lab from the field. Um, and then also just like reaching out. I did a bunch of mini projects basically for different professors and helped them randomly throughout my college career. And all of those absolutely helped prepare me for where I am now. Watching my professors publish was something that was really beneficial to me because I have a better understanding of what publishing is. Learning how to write papers is incredibly important if you want to go into research. Understanding the format, understanding all of the different things that you need to even have a coherent paper that can be published is important. And learning that in your undergrad just gives you a leg up, especially if you want to go to grad school. Um, just being aware of all of the different things that go into whatever area you want to be in, even if it's not in the same area. Most of it was just the labs. I put myself out there a lot. I didn't go to the New Jersey Institute of Technology, but Rutgers has seminars where they have guest speakers from other colleges. I would go to those seminars. They happened, I think, once a week for the school year. Um, and I would go to those seminars and I would sit in and I would listen, and that broadens your understanding of how much research and how many areas there are for you to go into. And that's how I ended up working for the Brook Fleming at the New Jersey Institute of Technology. Um, so those are mostly what I did. I like to compare being in the space with a shark to if you were in the space with a lion. You would not walk up to a lion and pet it if you were on a safari. right? Because that is not logically, that makes no sense. Um, and the same applies to sharks. If you would not just go up to a shark and try to grab it. They do not have hands like we do, they have their mouths. And so their automatic reaction is going to be their mouth. They're not like us, where if something touches us, we slap our arm. The mosquito lands on us, we hit it with our hands. Like they have teeth, and that's it. Um, I think most of the times what happens is we forget that we're going into their habitat. We're entering their home. Like they live there. That is where they belong. Um, so if you step on one, for example, it's gonna bite you. I would bite you if you stepped on me. I would not like that. And the same goes for if you're fishing. People who recreationally fish for sharks will get bitten because they're not holding them the correct way. You should not be holding a shark just by their tail, because they will whip around and bite you because you're holding them out of their habitat. And I think a lot of times the way it's framed is that the person was just innocently standing in the water and they just got bit by a shark. And a lot of times that's not what's happening. Um, and then when it comes to like surfers and things like that, sharks do not have 20/20 vision like we do. And again, because they don't have fingers, when they're curious about something, they nip at it. They don't take their fin and like rub it along your leg. Um, and so I think that we have a tendency to forget that. And then the way that we frame different things that have happened with sharks, like attacks, um, gets very twisted around in the media, and it turns them into being not the victim, which in most of the times is what they are. In all honesty, it would have been um, how I handled some of my classes during college. Especially when you go in as a freshman, it's really easy to get, um, off topic from doing your academics, and you have to find a really good balance between your social life and your academic life. And college requires a completely different amount of your time for your classes. Like you have set times that you go to class, but you doing all your work is entirely up to you. There is not a parent or an adult there who's going to sit there and say, you need to sit down and do your homework right now. So if you wait, you're going to be up all night doing an assignment that's due the next day, and that is entirely your fault. You can't blame that on anyone. Um, so, recognizing that early on, um, earlier than I did, and then really applying it once I figured that out, um, is something that I would change. The other thing that I would change is how long it took me to figure out that I should not be comparing myself to other people. When you get to college, there are so many different kinds of people, and even in high school, who some will do no work and they'll get straight A's. I am not that person. I would have to do a lot of work to get minimum grades. Um, and learning early on that you should not be comparing yourself to other people is incredibly beneficial to you, because it saves you a lot of time putting yourself down when you could be finding alternatives to show how smart you are and how capable you are as a person. When you're choosing your college, I would make sure that again they have at least part of the department that you want to go into. It's not a requirement, but it will make your life easier to get into that field. Um, Keeping up with new discoveries that come out, this insanely large project that they just did. Keeping up with that kind of news just so you can see where more research is needed in certain areas. Talking with people, finding people in your department, finding people that your parents know who do marine science, and talking with them about their research, asking them what their path has been, is incredibly important. Everyone goes into marine science from a different path. No one has the same path getting in. Some people don't do marine science in their undergrad, then go to grad school and do marine science and then do a PhD. Some people like me go in declared as a marine science and then follow it all the way through. Um, so, learning as much as you can about the field from people that you know and learning about their experiences is one really great way to get yourself into the field and to learn more about it and to narrow your own interest down. Um, and the last part I think would just be, on top of being aware of the publishing, being aware of where research is needed. Um, reading papers and having a question and then realizing that that question has never been answered before. Maybe that's something that you're going to answer during your career. So being aware of current research is definitely, I would highly recommend that to anyone. Feel free to reach out to me on any of those. And this is the website for Minorities in Shark Sciences. We have a membership open, and you can join as long as you are at least a freshman in high school. And you can talk to a bunch of women of color who are in shark science. My words of wisdom is that you can do absolutely anything that you want as long as you put your mind to it. Um, and finding where you excel can take a while, and realizing that you might not excel in a one part of your field but you excel in another part is completely normal. And you should be putting yourself in situations where you can learn and you can pick the brains of all of these amazing scientists that are older than you, and really get yourself interested in one field or another. And it's okay if you go into college not knowing what you want to do. I knew I wanted to do marine science. I have many friends who went in undeclared for a major and then figured it out in their freshman year. You do not have to have your life planned. I went through college essentially just hoping for the best and putting myself in situations where the best outcome could come out. But I by no means had my life together, nor do I by any means 100% have my life together now. So do not feel all of the pressure that is put onto you to know what you're going to do at such a young age. You don't need to. And you have the time and you have the space to adventure and to recognize what areas you're super interested in and then excel in those.